Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So the season 4 finale is tonight and it's called The Children, so I thought it'd be fun to do a bonus video about the Children of the Forest. Obviously, the finale is going to be about a lot of different children, Lannister children, Stark children, mostly the people we've been watching all season. But the Children of the Forest is a really big group of people that the show has only mentioned, but not shown us yet. Real quick shout out to all the new people. Hello, if you're just finding me for the first time, I do weekly Game of Thrones videos. Be sure to subscribe to get everything. I know this week is the finale, but there's a lot of exciting Song of Ice and Fire stuff happening later this year, so I'll be doing a bunch of bonus videos. I'll explain that later in my episode 10 video tonight though. Until then, let's start this video with the history lesson from Maester Luwin. May he rest in peace. The first time we heard about the Children of the Forest was during the first book in Season 1 when Bran was listening to stories from Old Nan and Maester Luwin. I've always been a fan of the way George R.R. Martin gives us history lessons using the oral tradition, just like it would have been done in the real world before literacy and book printing became really common. Fun fact, in real life, about 10% of the world is still illiterate. It's a really depressing figure, but those people depend a lot on the oral tradition of passing down history the same way people in A Song of Ice and Fire do. What are the children, though? The best way I can think to describe them is being like Aboriginal Westerosi. They were the very first people to inhabit Westeros. They didn't call it Westeros at the time, but it wasn't till about 12,000 years ago that they made first contact with the First Men. Until that time, they had lived in symbiosis with the land, but then they signed a pact with the First Men to end their war, and the First Men basically took the land that would now become modern-day Westeros, and the children took to the forest, which is kind of where their name came from, Children of the Forest. So they never really called themselves Children of the Forest. It's just like the wildlings not thinking of themselves as wildlings. It's just someone else's term for describing them. So let's talk a little bit about their culture. No one really understands the language they spoke, but they describe it as being very musical. Like music was a big part of their culture, so naturally their language kind of evolved from music. They hunted in groups and used weapons and implements the way real-life Aboriginal people did, with a similar social structure. They didn't have kings or queens. They lived in groups, in caves, in trees, and just all over the land. They were also the ones that started fashioning tools and weapons out of obsidian. That's what that dragonglass dagger was made of that we saw Samwell use to kill the White Walker. Dragonglass is just another name for obsidian. When Maester Luwin was telling stories to Bran, he said that the children have been dead for about 1,000 years, and the only thing we have left to remember them as a visual reminder is the faces on the weirwood trees. Like this face here when Bran first had his vision of the Great Weirwood Tree. It's believed that the children are the ones that carved those faces on the trees. They didn't just spontaneously grow whenever the trees grew. I think it's interesting that Maester Luwin says that the Children of the Forest have been dead for 1,000 years, when a lot of characters on the show would not stop talking about how dragons were dead right up to that season 1 finale. That's one of my favorite things about the show and the books. It makes you feel like sometimes the characters are unreliable narrators. Like when we're in a POV chapter or a character on the show is telling a story, they believe what they're saying is true even if they might have it wrong. Dragons being the best example. Even as recently as a couple of episodes ago when Ser Jorah ran afoul of Tywin Lannister, it seemed like there were people on the Small Council that still did not believe Daenerys' dragons were real. Although I think that Tywin does believe they're real. So anytime you hear a legend or a prophecy like Children of the Forest on the show, it might just be true. Historically, there are a couple really big, earth-changing events that the children are associated with, most notably the Long Night, but they're also associated with the shattering of the Arm of Dorne, basically breaking the big land bridge that connected Westeros with Essos. I remember the first time I heard that, all I could think about was the Isthmus of Panama. It was a real-life land bridge that allowed a bunch of animals to travel back and forth between North and South America during the Eocene era. That was like 56 million years ago in real life. In our world, in the real world, there have been all kinds of land bridges that have connected like Asia, North America that have come and gone as sea levels change, but in Westeros and Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin just uses magic and war to get rid of his land bridge. About 4,000 years after their war with the First Men ended, the White Walkers invaded. That was the beginning of the Long Night. Based on the way the literature has portrayed the children in the White Walkers, I choose to think of them as the most important two sides of the fire and ice coin. It can't be a complete coincidence that the Children of the Forest originated the only weapon that's known to kill White Walkers, the obsidian daggers. We know more about the magic of the White Walkers than the children, but as the story unfolds, I think we'll learn that there are a lot more similarities between those two races. Based on Old Nan's stories, the last hero, the hero of the Long Night in all the big legends and tales, was only able to defeat the White Walkers with the help of the Children of the Forest, so whichever way the story chooses to bring them back, I think that they're going to be really, really important. I should also say that just like a lot of historical events like the conquering of Westeros, the Long Night probably did not end with a single battle. It probably took many, many years to end it. The best information we have about the magic of the Children of the Forest is that it mostly revolves around green sight. That's the ability to see prophetic dreams. On the show, Jojen said that green dreams always come true, but it's possible that they could also be subject to interpretation. Or like in the case of Daenerys and Melisandre's visions, they could be seeing things that may have happened in an alternate timeline. There's still so much that we don't know about their power, as well as the power of the White Walkers, so I'm pretty sure that George R. R. Martin is going to unveil that in the forthcoming books, and obviously the show's probably going to do it too, because it goes way deeper than necromancy and prophetic dreams. I don't think next year on the show is going to completely explain all that stuff, but I'll talk about that during my Season 5 predictions video. So let's talk more about the Weirwoods, because their power is closely associated with Greensight and the Children of the Forest. During Season 4, Bran has had a lot of visions of the Great Weirwood in the north. Maester Luwin told him that supposedly the faces on those trees allow the children to see things wherever there are other Weirwoods with faces. It reminds me a lot of Professor X inside Cerebro. It just gives him the ability to see all over the world. Stannis Baratheon's story is a good example of some weaknesses in that power though. There used to be Weirwoods in all the castles of Westeros, like the Heart Tree and the Godswood at Winterfell, but when Stannis became a follower of the Red God, he burned his tree as a symbolic way of casting out the old gods and letting in a new one. So obviously, if anyone was able to see through the faces in Weirwoods, they would not be able to see at Dragonstone anymore. And I don't want to imply that the Red God is a newer god than the old gods. The literature isn't really clear about whether deities actually exist or if magic comes from some other place. Or if they all exist, which god originated the other gods. I know a lot of you guys have commented about your theories of how some of the gods might be the same god, like different aspects of the same god. It's like saying the Christian god and the Muslim god are the same god, and those religions just choose to interpret that differently. I don't think that's completely true. I do think there are separate gods on Game of Thrones, but I do believe that a lot of the smaller prophecies are different parts of a larger prophecy. So without talking too much about tonight's episode, I really hope we get a teaser for the Children of the Forest. The trailer for episode 10 kind of makes it seem like we're traveling to this tree, like we'll actually physically travel to it. Based on the amount of book material the show has done this season, there's still a lot of books 4 and 5 to do next year. So when I post my finale video tonight, I'll add chapter references in case you guys want to cross-reference stuff in the books just to see how far the show has gone. As a side tangent, if you guys want to learn more about Greensight and Greenseers, I did a Bloodraven bonus video a couple weeks ago, so I'll add a link to that in the description. But now it's your guys' turn. Let me know, how do you think that the White Walkers and the Children of the Forest are connected? Are they ancient enemies, or are they just two different groups of magical creatures that have absolutely nothing to do with each other? I'll be posting my finale video after the episode airs tonight. Be sure to subscribe to get it. I'll also have more details about the giveaway whenever I post that. You can actually click here to watch it. I'll add the annotation as soon as I post it. And you can click here to get my Season 5 predictions video. I'm going to be posting that on Monday. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys tonight. Be sure to get ready. High fives.